Coming up in about 20 seconds.
M1D throttle down.
We heard we're throttling down the Merlin engines on the first stage. And we have Miko.
Stage separation confirmed. The first stage beginning its flight back. The second stage being powered by that single Merlin 1D vacuum engine has ignited and is now carrying Bob and Doug into orbit. So they're going to continue under the power of this second stage.
Stage 2 propulsion is nominal.
Which will cut off at SECO, or second engine cut off at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds into today's flight. So a little over 5 minutes to go still on this second stage. You heard the call out to Alpha, so they're now in the longest abort zone that carries them all the way from about North Carolina up the eastern seaboard almost to Canada. Things looking good though, getting good call outs, nominal propulsion on that second stage. Bob and Doug continuing to make their way into orbit.
Dragon SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Acquisition of signal in Bermuda.
SpaceX Dragon nominal trajectory.
All right, hearing nominal trajectory, so Dragon pointed in the right direction, continuing to make their flight uphill. Heard acquisition of signal Bermuda. That's one of the other ground stations that they're using to get telemetry and data back from this spacecraft.
Stage 2 propulsion is still nominal.
A little over 4 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Bob and Doug flying at more than 5,600 miles
Dragon
per hour.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Already almost 200 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Nominal trajectory continuing. And while they continue uphill, looks like we are getting a view of the first stage as well.
Yep, on your right screen, you can see that first stage with the grid fins deployed. It's making its way back to attempt to land on our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You Today. And we're just about a couple minutes away from the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 Merlin engines do ignite to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. And then after the entry burn will be the landing burn, which is just a single engine
Dragon
burn.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
And you heard
Nominal
starting chill for entry burn.
there's that call out. They are still on a nominal trajectory on Dragon, still on second stage, and that's that MVAC engine on second stage on your left screen. Again, on your right screen is that first stage booster coming back towards our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You. We're about a minute away from entry burn.
Meanwhile, that second stage continuing to power Dragon into orbit. Again, if you're keeping an eye on that timer, that's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds into flight. So a little over 2 minutes from now, we'll hear the call out SECO. It'll then be a little
Stage
under,
2 propulsion is still good.
A little over 3 minutes until Dragon physically separates from the second stage of the Falcon 9 after the upper
Dragon
stage gets a
SpaceX
chance.
nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to check in with Bob and Doug as they are on a nominal trajectory. Just about 10 seconds away from that first stage, starting that entry burn on your right screen. We should be able to see that view live.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there is that entry burn beginning. This burn lasts about 36 seconds long.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
that entry burn continues. We're just about a minute away from SECO. We'll have a number of events, all stages of the Falcon 9 doing their job, placing Bob and Doug into orbit. I mean, this is a day, this is a historical day. This is us kicking off that new era of space flight that we've all been talking about and longing for since the Space Shuttle program came to an end in 2011.
Yes.
And the weather cooperated.
Yes. Second time's a charm.
Right.
All right, so day for the history books. As you can see, we have lost some live signal there, but the mission still continues, and we're going to send it over to KSC to continue broadcasting live with you
Expected loss
guys.
of signal in Newfoundland.
Yeah, Jesse and Dan, we are just in awe over here. When I woke up this morning and looked at the weather forecast, I was like, man, we're going to be back here on Sunday, but we did it. The room cleared out. Everybody was outside watching, and inside the lights were shaking, the cameras were shaking. Lauren came back in with tears in her eyes. This is really amazing.
I can't believe it. I saw it with my own eyes. This is, I'm a little bit speechless. Just so grateful that we got them up there, and there's a lot more to go, but I'm so happy they're safe right now. I'm just so happy.
Yeah. Leland, you were talking about it. It's amazing what we can do when we work together.
Yes, American astronauts on an American rocket from American soil, showing you what Americans can do when we come together as a team and blast Doug and Bob off to the cosmos. This is what it's all about, and their families and everyone is working together to take them up to space safely. So I don't know what to say. That rocket fuel is still in my veins, and I want to go get on the rocket.
Well, it's too late now. Maybe the next one.
I know.
But we want to go over to Daryl at OSB2. He's there with the administrator, who hopefully has more words than we do, because we're still kind of speechless. Daryl?
Pretty incredible here, Marie, at the Operations Support Building, where a chorus of applause has been happening from the beginning of launch and throughout the various stages. Some very special guests were here to watch it. That includes President Donald Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, who joins me now. And you were with the President and the Vice President. America's back, launching human astronauts again. Tell me how you feel about that, and tell me about the President watching the launch and what happened there.
So this has been a long time coming. It's been 9 years since we've launched American astronauts on American rockets from American soil, and now it's done. We have done it. It's been way too long. I want to give a lot of credit to Charlie Bolden. He was my predecessor as the NASA administrator. He fought hard for this program at a time when it didn't get any support in Congress. We now have an administration that is fully supportive of our spaceflight initiatives, not just on the exploration, discovery, going to the moon, onto Mars, but also from a Space Force perspective. Our budgets are going up, things are strong, and today was just just an amazing day. You know, one of the things the President did right out of the gate when he became President is he created what's called the National Space Council, and he put the Vice President as chairman of the National Space Council. And on that National Space Council, you've got the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Education, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all of these different amazing individuals that deal with space day in and day out. A lot of people don't realize how many parts of the federal government deal with space. And the Vice President invited those members of the National Space Council here as well. So we just had, and then we had members of Congress, bipartisan members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, who have been involved in supporting this program you know, for a long time now. So I'll just tell you, I'm breathing a sigh of relief. But I will also tell you, I am not going to celebrate until Bob and Doug are home safely. Tomorrow, they're going to dock to the International Space Station. Tonight, I'm heading to Houston to be at the Johnson Space Center when that happens. So it's a bit of a relief. The nose cone is now open. It's now deployed, which means that you know, now we're going to go into some burns. We're going to have some phasing burns. We're going to have some you know, boosting burns, and we're going to get as much as we can in alignment with the International Space Station as early as possible here. But also, I know it's hard, but you know, the big thing that we need to do now is we got to get Bob and Doug, who have now gone through this exercise twice. They need to get some rest. But I can guarantee you there will be no rest for a good amount of time while they're up there in orbit.
And they are certainly on their way, and a lot of people joining us for this entire celebration and watching it. We just heard 10 million people watching live as this launch happened, and President Donald Trump becoming the third sitting president to watch a launch live from the Kennedy Space Center. The first.
To be clear, I think he's the only sitting president to watch American astronauts launch on a brand new rocket that has never launched before, and that's a big risk. You know, he also said we're going to go to the moon by 2024. That means he's putting himself at risk to say, look, I'm going to be accountable, potentially, I'm going to be accountable to the initiatives that I put forward. And I think we have not had that kind of leadership for space in a very, very long time, and we're so grateful for it.
What was it like watching the launch with the president? How did he react?
Oh, I'll tell you, it's obviously something that is near and dear to him. He said it a year and a half ago. He put it in the State of the Union speech. He said, we're going to launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. And of course, I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, we better get after this. Of course, we've worked overtime to make it happen. We might be a little behind schedule, but we got it done, and we got it done safely. We're knocking on wood, but so far so good. It's looking good.
You personally, Jim, as that rocket was lifting off and you felt that rumble?
Yeah.
What'd you feel? What'd you experience?
Well, I was praying. I'm not going to lie to you. I was praying. I was praying for Bob and Doug. I was praying for their families. I was praying for their safe return, even though they're just going. But man, I'll tell you, it was, I've heard that rumble before, but it's a whole different feeling when you've got your own team on that rocket, and they are our team. They are America's team. This is Launch America. This is everything that America has to offer in its purest form. And times are tough right now. There is no doubt. We've got the coronavirus pandemic. We have other challenges as a country. But I hope this moment in time is an opportunity for everybody to reflect on humanity and what we can do when we work together, when we strive, and when we achieve. And if this can inspire a young child to become the next Elon Musk or the next Jeff Bezos or the next Sir Richard Branson, then that's what this is all about.
Or the next Jim Bridenstine.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't put me in that category, but.
Well, we appreciate your leadership for the space agency at this time, and congratulations on an amazing day in the launch.
Thank you. It's been a great ride.
All right, very good. Marie, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Doug and Bob are on course to arrive at the International Space Station tomorrow, May 31st at 10:27 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be staying on the air for continuous live coverage along the entire ride to the station. So though our coverage here is concluding, we will turn it over to the teams in Hawthorne and Houston to take us through the next phases of the Demo 2 mission, all the way through hatch opening and a welcome ceremony on the space station for Bob and Doug tomorrow.
That's right. And as you follow along, we invite you to tune into a post-launch news conference that's happening here at 6:30 this evening Eastern Time on NASA TV. We'll have NASA and SpaceX leaders here to take questions live on this unprecedented achievement in human spaceflight. And in addition to NASA TV, you can follow along always on Twitter at @NASA and nasa.gov for mission updates as it progresses. Here now are highlights from the mission so far. May 30th, 2020. Remember this day. You'll have this memory forever. The day America returned astronauts to orbit from U.S. soil.
Wow, we're making history again.
Let's go.
Leaving the International Space Station webcast.
The day America
path for
Doug and Bob are nice and close to the International Space Station, opening up the hatch and getting some air right between the hatch where Bob and Doug will enter the International Space Station. Everything
team for this mission. So everything that they're doing now and have done all day, despite the unfortunate scrub that we had earlier in the week, was just an extra practice test, which was awesome. But you know, it was nothing new for them. They had rehearsed everything, and same goes with this. All of the procedures that we are running through now, and we'll continue to run through all through the duration of the mission. Bob and Doug have, you know, they are super familiar with what's going to happen and what they're expected to do.
should be coming up near the end of the phase burn. Again, this is the first in 5. The next major one's going to be the boost burn. That's going to raise their orbit up to just about 10 kilometers below the station itself. And so they're just going to get closer and closer in these incremental steps. And you'll see in this graphic that when they do these burns, it looks like they're kind of doing a little bit of a loop-de-loop. This graph is in relation to the space station itself. So on one axis, the Y, you have how far below you are, and on the X, how far behind the station you still are. It's not perfectly to scale.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal burn.
Nominal burn.
And we just heard the 2 words we were hoping for, nominal burn. So 1 burn out of 5 checked. And so that was the first one. The next one coming up is going to be the boost burn in about 1 hour and 24 minutes. Before they get to that, though, we are going to be looking forward to that manual flight test where they're going to be taking the reins and they're going to be taking control of Dragon itself.
Yeah, so in preparation for that moment, I highly encourage you all to check out the simulation that we have on SpaceX.com. It's actually an awesome opportunity for you to test your own skills at steering.
Hey, Dragon, SpaceX, we are disabling cameras, and you are go for suit doffing and on-orbit cabin configuration. Note that camera caps, which will be tethered, can be found in location 8, and cameras are currently configured.
Yeah, so as I was...
Okay, Dragon copy, suit doffing in work. We see that the cameras are off, and we can do on-orbit activation.
Copy all. And Dragon, also at your convenience, if you can confirm the gas detectors are off, location 14.
Welcome.
Okay, so what's going on at this point is Bob and Doug now have the opportunity to take their suits off. This is referred to as doffing, as donning is actually putting the suits on. They'll actually be able to remove those suits at this time, get a little bit more comfortable in the cabin, and they'll be putting those suits back on when they get closer to the International Space Station. And like I was saying before, I highly encourage you all to check out the simulation that we have online where you can test out your skills at steering Dragon and docking it to the International Space Station. That website is iss.sim.spacex.com. And like I said, you can test your own skills at flying Dragon.
And Dragon SpaceX, one additional note, no need to reply, but the next burn will be the boost burn. And that's in about 1 hour and 23 minutes per your timeline.
All right.
We copy, thank you.
Yeah, definitely give the Crew Dragon docking demonstration a try. It's a lot of fun. It gives you a pretty good appreciation of just how difficult it is to fly and maneuver in space when you're not just thinking about going forward and backward. You have every axis imaginable that you have to worry about. Took me a couple of tries. I know those first couple I got impatient and flew in way too quickly, and then one time started to spin pretty wildly out of control. So it's probably a good thing I'm down here and they're up there, but it's a lot of fun to check out.
Yeah, I was also really surprised at how many levels of control there are and how difficult it is to actually get them all to work in sync at the right speeds. Of everyone that I've spoken to that has tried it out first, it's unanimous. Everyone went too fast the first couple tries. I was the same. Although by my third or fourth try, I'm happy to say that my decades of Star Fox 64 training finally paid off. And I did. I managed to dock to the station after practicing a few times.
SpaceX Dragon. Check.
And Dragon, you were a little broken, but I did copy you.
How about this time? How you hear on the cabin mic?
Loud and clear on the cabin mic.
Copy that.
We have you the same.
Well, with that first burn nominal and out of the way, the next one coming up in a little over an hour and 20 minutes from now, the next thing we're really going to be looking forward to is this manual free flight. So as we've said quite a bit, Crew Dragon is designed to fly fully autonomous, meaning the spacecraft does all of the navigating and burns to the station all on its own. There are manual override controls, though, on the spacecraft that enables the astronauts to step in, take control should any issues arise. And to test out those controls, Bob and Doug are about to do the first of 2 planned manual maneuvers inside Dragon.
So they'll be using the touchscreen controls that we've seen at various points in the webcast, the crew display panel, and they'll practice putting Dragon in what's known as LVLH attitude. LVLH, or local vertical, local horizontal configuration, means that they'll use Earth itself as a guide and reorient Dragon with the nose cone pointing forward, and the bottom of Dragon, and at the bottom of Dragon, at least from where Bob and Doug are sitting, the Earth will be directly below them. So think of it as they'll basically be putting Dragon in the same orientation as an airplane flying over Earth.
And they'll be taking this manual control, but they'll stop one step before actually sending the command of their attitude adjustments to Dragon's flight computer. So the flight computer itself is still going to continue flying Dragon, and as soon as they're done, they'll hand control back over. The flight computer will reorient Dragon, and it will continue on its way. It's going to fly in a whole bunch of different attitudes on the way up to station. Unlike the space station pretty much only flies in that LVLH. It's pretty much always going the same direction, but that's because it's got very big joints for the solar arrays to rotate around. For Dragon, they'll have to maneuver the trunk to charge the batteries, maneuver to sometimes communicate with the different satellites, depending on which antennas they're using. And so this LVLH will just be a test for this manual flight test.
Exactly. And like we said before, there is that simulation online where you can check it out for yourself.
Yeah, definitely get a chance to go pilot Dragon. We're going to be seeing that tomorrow morning. It was surreal when we got to see it on Demo 1 with Dragon coming in. We've got some great cameras right on that docking port where Dragon's going to be pointed. It's going to be really exciting to see them come in for that final approach.
Dragon SpaceX, no response required, but we are going to be enabling branch 2 of the helium system. This is expected to be done on orbit to protect for a scrub. And Dragon SpaceX, this is just clarification. This will get us back into the expected on-orbit config.
Dragon copies.
Dragon SpaceX prop reconfiguration is complete and expected.
And if you're just now tuning in, you missed the launch, so you might want to head online and make sure you go back and check that out. But Bob Bank and Doug Hurley, our two NASA astronauts, are flying through outer space right now after that successful launch just a little while ago. We're going to be bringing you this ground track that you're looking at. You're going to be able to see exactly where Dragon is over planet Earth, and you're going to see a number of different lines, so usually 3 at a time. And so what that is showing is each of those orbits around planet Earth for the Dragon spacecraft. And it looks like it's wavy, but that's because you're taking a globe and then stretching it out flat. And so that's why it looks like, so it is a straight line if you were actually looking at it around the globe. So with that on-time launch, they've already traveled well away from the Kennedy Space Center. They're already downrange, way in excess of 600 miles. But they're going to continue to fly around the planet Earth. They're going to continue to raise their orbit over the next 19 hours. They were successful in doing so with their first burn, the phase burn. That was done.
And SpaceX Dragon for suit doffing. We started a timer for the drying of both suits about 4.5 minutes ago, if you guys want to back us up.
Copy. Timer started for suit drying 4.5 minutes ago. We'll back you up.
And that was the Demo 2 commander, Doug Hurley, talking to the core behind us right here in Mission Control Hawthorne. The crew has doffed or gotten out of their spacesuits that they've been in for several hours now, and they kind of hanging it up, almost like hanging up your clothes just to dry, and they're going to continue to they have a timer just to know when they're fine to just pack them away. They're not going to have to put those suits on again until tomorrow when it's time to dock with the space station.
Quick, I want to comment there on the view on the right-hand side of your screen. That is, if Bob and Doug were looking out the window, that's basically what they'd be seeing right now. That's a live shot from Dragon, and with Planet Earth rotating below it.
But yeah, they're going to continue to make their way up over the next couple of hours. We have a number of items coming out for them, though. We are still counting down to that manual flight test. That should be coming up within the next half hour, and that's going to be Bob and Doug actually taking control of the Dragon spacecraft for the very first time. So that's going to be really exciting. Hopefully we'll get some video inside of the cabin. We'll have video inside the cabin anytime that the crew is ready for us to come on board. And anytime we have connection through ground stations, through SpaceX's worldwide network of ground stations to communicate with the spacecraft.
Yeah, and just real quick, I want to correct myself now that I can see the image a little better. That's actually a live shot from the International Space Station.
I thought it looked like a radiator.
Yeah, for a second I thought it was the Dragon trunk there. But nope, that is the ISS. So that's where Bob and Doug are heading. And like we have been saying so far, this is just the beginning of what is a 19-hour journey for them. So they've got a lot of stuff coming up. Like we've been saying, there are 5 main burns. We've completed the first of those 5 main burns. And they will be going to sleep in a while. Well, they'll eat first, and then they'll get to sleep. And that sleep portion of the mission is actually really important because we need them to be really well rested and comfortable whenever they start doing the approach phases to the International Space Station. So they get scheduled 8 hours, if I remember correctly. Yep. And I mean, you can see whenever we had the views inside of Dragon earlier, you can see that
SpaceX Dragon 4.300 is complete.
Copy. 4.300 complete.
So again, that's Bob and Doug just getting the cabin configured. They're out of their suits, getting a little bit more comfortable, and then hopefully we'll be getting to that manual flight test in just a little while. Yeah, they'll have about 8 hours of sleep scheduled. I don't know how you can go to sleep on a day like today, but I also don't know how they were as calm and collected as they were. So again, you're dealing with some special people when you're flying somebody into space.
For sure. And as we saw from our views inside the cabin earlier, they will be sitting in a sitting position while they're sleeping. Whereas on the International Space Station, they have a flat bed, if you will, that they get strapped in. So the sleeping situation that they have for their ride on Dragon is definitely a little different than what they'll have on their longer stay on the International Space Station.
just to walk you through quickly, we're looking live right now from Bob and Doug's destination, the International Space Station. They are scheduled to dock tomorrow, with that initial docking coming at 7:29 a.m. Pacific time. So over here on the West Coast, it'll be 10:29 a.m. over on the East Coast. It's about a 19-hour ride. It'll be 19 hours and 7 minutes if they dock directly on time from launch all the way to that docking. It'll take 5 successful burns to get them in close proximity to the International Space Station, followed by a number of smaller maneuvers during that rendezvous and that final approach sequence. But it's going to be a pretty lengthy trip for them to get there. And again, starting off from Kennedy Space Center just less than an hour ago, I think at this point. Time is starting to all flow together, but already moving in excess of 17,000 miles an hour as they continue to raise their orbit and chase down the space station. And once they get there, they're going to be joining the Expedition 63 crew already in progress. There's NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy's the current commander. He's on the right there of that photo. And then he was joined right now by 2 Russian cosmonauts, Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner. They've been on board since they launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome just several weeks ago. Right now, only a 3-person crew on board. That's one of the major reasons we wanted to get this commercial crew capability online, because we're no longer flying 4 Soyuz spacecraft a year. We're only doing 2 a year. And so we need these commercial spacecraft, Dragon now in orbit, and eventually the Boeing Starliner to begin carrying larger crews up to orbit. So they're going to be joining them. Chris Cassidy, the current commander of the space station, is going to welcome Doug and Bob on board. They'll be residing inside what we call the USOS segment. It's kind of the half of the station.
Dragon SpaceX for suit drying, low priority.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we just wanted confirmation that you are drawing suit 1 or suit 2 and seat 1, just because we're not seeing telemetry from umbilical.
Yeah, that's affirmative. Suit, my suit from seat 2 is in seat 1, and it's hooked up, and we've verified airflow.
Copy, thanks.
And at this point, the crew is out of their suits and they're drying them. So they're actually reconnecting them to the umbilicals of the seats that they're not using. You heard them refer to seats 2 and 1. If you were looking inside the Dragon capsule, it goes seats 1 through 4 from right to left. So it's a little backwards. Doug Hurley is in seat number 2. That's the commander's seat. Bob Behnken, seat 3. That's the pilot's seat for this flight. And obviously, nobody in seats 1 and 4 on this way uphill, but they are getting their suits connected to the umbilicals, which can provide communications when the astronauts are actually in the suit, but you can actually flow air into the suit through that umbilical, and they're just using that to dry it out now that the crew's not wearing them and they're comfortable on orbit.
Yeah, I can imagine that despite that airflow going through the suits throughout the entire time of leading up to launch and launch itself, I can imagine it's still, with the adrenaline and their hearts pumping, I imagine it might have gotten a little sweaty in there anyway.
Yeah, doing a little bit kind of like hanging your laundry in space almost, but they're going to be out of these suits for the next several hours. They'll be able to get a little bit more comfortable in the Dragon capsule. They will be wearing them again when it's time to dock, though. We typically have astronauts suit up anytime they're in a dynamic operation, so that's obviously a launch, anytime you're docking or undocking from a spacecraft, and then definitely on that re-entry and landing.
Yeah, so as you've heard us say before about these suits, they are custom made for Bob and Doug. So there's really no chance that they might be able to put the other ones on. Like their name is stitched on it for obvious reasons. But these suits are highly intelligent and highly functional. So even though they naturally will be more comfortable out of the suit, they have said that the suits themselves are pretty nice to sit in. And, as you can see from today's events and the launch attempt that we had before, they do spend quite a bit of time in those suits. So yeah, they are custom made for each individual astronaut, made here on site in Hawthorne, California. Same building that we build the rocket, and same building that we build the spacecraft. So pretty cool to see of that piece of hardware itself now in action, finally in Dragon.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about how the suit is almost like a mini spacecraft itself. And we always say that when we talk about when crew members go out for spacewalks, because that suit is kind of self-contained to have all of the breathing air, things like that, just in case they need it. Specifically for these flight suits on Dragon, they're going to be most needed if you have a depressurization, so just a loss of cabin pressure inside of Dragon. They're able to be in their suits. They can get pressurized nitrox or even pure oxygen if they are depressurized, and their suit will be at a lower pressure, because if you put the suit up all the way to 14 psi, it'd be kind of what we look at when you talk about wearing the large EMU, the great big white suit that we wear for spacewalks. Pressurizing that all the way up to atmospheric pressure would be you in a giant balloon where you probably wouldn't be able to move your arms very easily. So when you're in a suit and it's pressurized, you're typically at a much lower PSI. I'm not sure what the SpaceX suits are at, but our EMUs are at about 4, and then you have to up the oxygen content in what you're breathing just to make sure you're still getting enough. So they'll be able to flow pure oxygen into those suits if required.
Yeah, so just as a quick update, in case if you are just joining us, we have obviously lifted off. Bob and Doug are now on their way to the International Space Station, probably about an hour and a half into what will be a 19-hour journey in chasing down the space station. And we are approaching what is known as the Far Field Manual Flight Test. And this is basically the opportunity that they'll have to take back control of the Dragon capsule and just perform the ability to pilot it manually. Dragon is a fully autonomous spacecraft, meaning that it drives itself. It is highly intelligent. The flight computer makes all the calls using all the inputs from the sensors and the data that it receives. And so realistically, this is meant to be a fairly hands-off flight to the International Space Station. But in the event that for some reason Bob and Doug need to, or whichever astronaut is on board Crew Dragon might need to take manual control, the Far Field Manual Flight Test, which we have coming up in just a few minutes actually, is what we will be doing to basically complete the test objective for this mission, saying, yeah, that is absolutely possible to do.
Yeah, it's right there in the name. It's a demonstration mission 2, which on demonstration mission 1, we didn't have crew members, but did a lot of tests of Dragon's maneuverability, even testing an abort when we were on that final approach and docking. And so Bob and Doug are really just on board to really put it through the ringer, to put all the systems through and check them out that would require a crew being on board, because this will be that final test before NASA looks to certify SpaceX to begin those regular crewed flights to the space station. So we're talking about those 6-month to year-long missions with crew members living and working in space. And we're looking at doing that later this year, as soon as we're wrapped up with Demo 2, as soon as a month after Bob and Doug return. We'll be looking for that next crew to go up, 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from our partner agency, JAXA, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. So things aren't slowing down. We're just at the very start of this mission. It's hard to think that we're already thinking forward to the next one this quickly, but that's just the nature of the business right now. Things
Absolutely.
are definitely picking up in space.
Yeah, as SpaceX engineer myself, part of my job is to help NASA come in and certify the hardware that we're building. So I have been inside of the capsule that's now in space. I've been inside the capsule that, as Jessica Jensen mentioned earlier in the webcast, earlier this week was just in the Dragon clean room, which is down the hallway from us here, which is now in a different building for it to complete high pressure testing. But as someone that has spent the last 5 years working for this mission that we're executing today, it is so surreal to now be performing the parts of testing, of demonstrating with the astronauts. I still remember hearing the comms check on Wednesday of, just pre-flight, making sure that all different the key players in the mission were able to communicate back and forth, as well as to Bob and Doug. And I just got chills whenever I heard that tone of them communicating back and forth to mission control.
Yeah, well, it was great to see them get off the ground today, and hopefully we see them in just about 10 minutes or so doing this flight test. So we're going to continue to follow along. Again, we're here for the duration.
Dragon, SpaceX for timeline.
Hopefully we get a call on how quickly we get that test right here.
Go ahead.
Okay, just for awareness, we have the manual flight demonstration here in about 10 minutes. As soon as that is complete, you have your go to step into your meal 3, and just to be aware that the boost burn is at 2142. So those 3 events are going to be pretty close in succession.
Thanks for the update. Yeah, we were looking at that. I think we're just about changed, so we'll give you a go to come back on board here in about maybe 5 minutes or so.
Copy that. We'll be standing by. And also, at your discretion, you can also de-stow the floater camera. And this is just prior to 2238.
All right, so there you heard it.
Copy that.
Should be joining Bob and Doug back inside the Dragon capsule in about 5 minutes or so. And then we should be seeing that manual flight test in a little less than 10 minutes from now. The International Space Station right now is flying. Let's get a quick look at the ground track. It's flying over the Pacific Ocean just to the southwest of Mexico, about to swing out over the central part of the United States. At the time of launch, though, it was right over North Carolina and actually passed right over the Cape minutes before flight. And we were able to get a couple of images down from the current Expedition 63 commander, Chris Cassidy. This picture is of that pad, 39A, at the Kennedy Space Center with Bob and Doug still on the launch pad, the rocket still there, taken 2 minutes before the launch.
That is
and
incredible.
He was able to send a couple of them down. So eagle eye for Chris Cassidy to snap these. We literally just got these down, so we wanted to share them with everybody. But the space station was flying directly over at the time of launch. We're almost at an hour and a half since launch, and it's already almost gone around the entire planet. Again, it's about to cross over the United States in the next couple of minutes. So that's what they're chasing down, and that's where you can kind of start to appreciate why this might take so long. When something is moving that quickly around planet Earth, it's not as easy as just kind of getting your car and going a couple miles. It takes a lot of energy, which means a lot of fuel, which can mean a lot of time to catch up to another spacecraft already in orbit.
Absolutely. And the fact that it is in orbit, the International Space Station in orbit around Earth, is really critical to understand there, because in reality, Bob and Doug are only going 250 miles up. So that's basically the distance from Los Angeles to San Francisco. So when you think about, even though it does take them a long time to catch up to the International Space Station, it's because it's going so fast, and they have to go around planet Earth a number of times in order to chase it down. But in reality, they are not. They are above Earth only about 250 miles, which I believe is a pretty relatable distance for everyone in terms of understanding just how far up they go.
All right, well, we are just about 6 minutes away from the start of that manual flight test. We'll hang out for a couple of minutes. Hopefully we see inside the capsule again shortly, and then we'll be joining Bob and Doug as they take the reins of Dragon for the very first time.
Yeah, and that timer for the suit drying, we should be getting confirmation of that.
SpaceX Dragon for suit drying.
There we go.
Dragon, go ahead.
Jay, our timer shows about 23 minutes for suit drying, and we're holding in 5 Bravo decimal 7 if you're happy with us shutting off the suit fan.
Yeah, we concur on the timer, and we are go for you to shut off the suit fan.
Should be just about 5 minutes or so from that manual flight test. Again, we're just standing by and hopefully getting those views back inside Dragon with Bob and Doug shortly. If you are just now joining us, we did launch successfully 3:22 p.m. Eastern time. So it was a flawless ride uphill. We got them right into their initial orbit. We've already done the first of our 5 major burns to get to the International Space Station, that phase burn being done successfully on time. We're standing by for the manual flight test coming up in the next couple of minutes.
SpaceX Dragon, you guys are welcome back on board anytime.
Copy all. Yeah, we'll be setting up for the manual piloting demo shortly.
Okay, so that was Bob and Doug giving the okay for us to turn the cameras back on inside of Crew Dragon. And I did hear in one of the previous commands earlier that
And Jay, just a quick tag up, the detectors are all confirmed off OFF.
Copy, confirmed off.
I did hear earlier that they got the okay to unstow the floater cams. So maybe if we're lucky, we might get a little bit of a hello from Bob and Doug. Fingers crossed.
It's going to be incredible to see this flight test, though, because, I mean, imagine if you were sitting in the cockpit of like an F-18 the first time somebody flew it or something. I mean, these are test pilots test piloting a spacecraft, and we're going to be looking right over their shoulder, and it's an incredible, like, I'm really excited to see this and to just really be with them their whole flight up to space. They'll have this, and then we'll have another burn coming up in a little less than 50 minutes from now. That'll be the second one. Will be a boost burn to really raise up that orbit as they begin to chase down the International Space Station. Then for the rest of the day, the crew doesn't have a whole lot. They'll have their evening meal, which we'll go through in a little while, and then it'll be time for bed. They'll have about 8 hours scheduled for sleep, and then they'll be able to wake up tomorrow and do that final approach and docking to the International Space Station. So it's already been a long day for them. They've only got a few more things, and then they'll be able to kind of kick back and enjoy outer space for a little bit.
Yeah. And like we said before, this far-field manual flight test that's coming up is the opportunity for them to is the opportunity for Bob and Doug to take manual control of the Dragon spacecraft, just to demonstrate that it is possible to do so in the event that they need to steer it themselves. This is a demonstration mission, so this far-field manual flight test is actually one of our big test objectives for this mission. So that'll be really exciting to see. But touching on the point that Dan said, which, by the way, that test should be coming up in a...
And Dragon SpaceX, for awareness, we're back on board.
Dragon copies. Welcome aboard.
All right, so that was the confirmation that we should be getting camera views inside the cabin once again. And there we got them. So we can see they're looking at their touch screens, preparing for this manual test that will be coming up in about 30 seconds. What a sight. I love that we can see right over their shoulders. We can see the screens.
Yeah, it's just incredible. If you keep your eye on the displays, the one on the far left will look very familiar to you if you've done that automated, or not, if you've done the manual docking demo that we were talking about a little bit earlier on the SpaceX website. Doug Hurley's going to be at the physical controls, so he's going to be the one flying today.
Dragon SpaceX, if you are ready, we're going to command far field pointing.
Here we go.
We are ready.
Copy. I'll give you the go after the transition is verified.
So again, they're going to put Dragon into a far field pointing. So they're going to put it into a special configuration just to let the flight computer know that, hey, this manual flight test is happening, and then the flight computer won't be trying to fight it or adjust the attitude at any point during this. And again, all of the inputs that Doug is going to make as he's doing the manual flying, they're not going to send those final commands to the flight computer. So when they're done, the flight computer takes back control of the spacecraft, continues flying on its way to the station.
Yeah, so I would imagine that right now they must be really excited to conduct this test. Bob and Doug are test pilots. This is what they live for. And for them to have the opportunity to test out a completely new vehicle, this upcoming test is certainly something that I'm sure they've been looking forward to.
So we're just going to continue to stand by. We'll get this test started. We'll be hopefully over their shoulder the whole time, and we'll bring you the results after it's concluded.
Okay, Dragon SpaceX, we'll see you in far field pointing. You are go to perform manual piloting test per 4.042, far field manual piloting. The test must be completed by 21:26.
Okay, we copy. We've got to go for 4.042. We'll put that in work and understand the test needs to be completed by 21:26 Zulu.
Good read back.
This is Mission Control Houston. For those of you watching, Bob and Doug are inside the Crew Dragon vehicle performing the manual flight test. You can maybe see a little bit on the front screens here from the inside cabin. Bob and Doug manually piloting the Crew Dragon. They're in something called local vertical, local horizontal. If you were to orbit around the Earth and not be in LVLH, you'd pretty much be staying at the same attitude as you orbit the Earth. The LVLH attitude pretty much points you towards the horizon, so you can follow the horizon as you orbit the Earth. This is a demonstration that Bob and Doug are conducting now. In the event that they were to take manual control, they can regain their attitude, point it towards the horizon of the Earth. Everything seems to be going according to plan. You can hear some of the Dragon teams saying they might be smiling a little bit as everything's going towards the manual flight test, and right according to plan. They had trained for this a lot on the ground in various simulations. Doing this manual test in orbit will give a nice relative perspective on how the Dragon performs in simulations versus the real thing. This is the first of 2 manual flight tests, the first one being a far field demonstration pointing toward the horizon of the Earth. It's called far field because it's far from the International Space Station. There's one more called the near field, and it's, you guessed it, close to the International Space Station. Dragon will point its way towards the International Space Station and perform a manual flight test, essentially changing its orientation in various axes, X, Y, and Z, and making sure that control is as expected. That coming up a little bit closer to docking. Right now, everything's looking good for this manual far field flight test. From here in Mission Control Houston, we're watching very closely. Back over to you over in Hawthorne.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Hey, thanks, Gary. Yeah, they are still going through that manual flight test again. This is their very first time to be at the controls of Dragon. They're putting it into that LVLH, so they're literally just using the Earth as kind of their guide point to realign Dragon. So they're essentially flying over it like an airplane when they're in this configuration. The nose cone of Dragon pointed forward into their velocity vector, so the direction that they're going. And then the bottom of the spacecraft, or essentially where Bob and Doug's feet are when they're in their seats, is pointing back down towards the Earth. So they're just sending commands to the thrusters, primarily those service section thrusters. There's 12 of them around the lower part of the Dragon spacecraft that are used for what we call attitude control, which is what they're testing out right now. And they're just going to continue to do this. And this is really their last major task for the day.
And it has been a day for sure. After they perform this test, they will have the opportunity to have their evening meal. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it's safe to say that if I were an astronaut, I would definitely have an appetite right now, and I would most certainly be looking forward to having my dinner.
Yeah, our video views on board Dragon will be a little broken up over the flight there. We'll obviously get a lot of great views of the spacecraft on its final approach to the International Space Station tomorrow morning, which we are going to be looking forward to. Again, it's about a 19-hour trip from launch till docking. We'll be looking forward to that docking tomorrow morning.
Something to note, we will be staying on air for the entire time until Bob and Doug hop on the International Space Station. So I know that this will certainly be setting a personal record in terms of longest webcast that I've participated in. I think second place was the Demo 2 Splashdown, or excuse me, the Demo 1 Splashdown webcast. But yeah, we will certainly be live this whole time, bringing you updates from Bob and Doug as they approach the International Space Station and eventually climb on board.
And we'll be live even overnight as they go through their sleep period. Be bringing you just some highlights from throughout the day, including what we're seeing right now. And then we just really want to stay with them the whole way just to make sure everything is going well with their flight as they make this historic first trip on a commercial spacecraft to the International Space Station. But right now, we're back inside the cabin. Doug Hurley on the left there, Bob Behnken on the right. Doug Hurley sending inputs to the Dragon spacecraft through that touchscreen and then manually adjusting. You can see right in the center of his crosshair, it looks like the screen is kind of split in half between light and dark. The light part of the screen in the bottom, that's planet Earth.
and SpaceX Dragon for 4.042. We see ourselves down through step 2.6. We'll have some comments on the thermal camera blanking out during the maneuver, which was different from training, but other than that, we think we're ready to move on to section 3.
Copy. Yeah, we saw those flickers as well, and we are ready to copy your words and copy you're moving into section 3.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and pick up in section 3. Here comes far field coast.
Copy.
And we're down to 3.4, SpaceX. We're ready for you to command back to far wait.
Copy. And Dragon SpaceX for displays.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is to mitigate a risk for a benign command being sent. We'd like you to go to audio settings from the display you use for manual piloting and adjust the gain setting for seat 1 or 4.
Okay, that's complete, and I did it on seat 1.
Copy. And expect the transition to far wait momentarily.
Okay, copy that.
And this is the team coming to you from Hawthorne. It does look like they've just about wrapped up this manual flight test. So again, we were able to watch Doug Hurley, the commander of Demo 2, take control of the Dragon spacecraft using those touchscreen displays. At this point, they're handing control back to Dragon's flight computers, and that'll be the last major task for them other than dinner.
Yeah, so as we can see on their screens there, they are completing, and like we mentioned before, we do have a simulation available online if you want to check out what it's like to steer Dragon manually yourself. Just head on over to, I believe it's iss-sim.spacex.com.
Yep, that's the one. And at this point, you've seen what the actual Dragon controls look like. So the ones online will look very familiar. Looks like we did just lose that ground station connection, so the video drops out inside the cabin. But that's one major flight test in the book. It's one of our major milestones for this mission. Again, it's a demonstration mission, so we're trying to really put the Dragon spacecraft through the paces. The next thing that's going to be coming up for them is their first meal on board Dragon.
Yeah. So just real quick, that view that you see there on your right-hand side, that's coming to us live from the International Space Station, Bob and Doug's ultimate destination for this particular mission.
Dragon SpaceX, you are now back in far wait. You're welcome to start your meal at your discretion. We've reconfigured interior cameras to no interior, and enjoy your new spaceship.
Wow, we are definitely doing that. Yeah, let us do a little housekeeping and get a little bit of dinner, and we'll call you back and bring you on board once we get everything cleaned up. But it's been a spectacular spaceship so far. Congrats to the Dragon teams and obviously everybody there in Hawthorne that's done all this work to get us up here.
Thanks, guys. Boost burn is in 30 minutes, and next time you'll hear from us, it will be with Laura.
Just like to say thanks to you, Jay, and Jason, and the whole Ascent team. It was quite a ride. We'll certainly tell you about it when we have a little debrief on board station. And yeah, everybody go home. And one thing, just kind of remember this moment. It's been pretty incredible. And you guys have a great night.
Thanks. You too, and we'll be following along.
So what we heard there, a little bit of back and forth between mission controllers here in Hawthorne, behind me, and Bob and Doug chasing down the International Space Station. We had confirmation that Farfield went well and that the capsule was put back into its autopilot, essentially. So they will now be starting up their evening meal. Okay, I guess there was no comms there. So like I said, they're going to start their first meal on board Dragon. They have enough food on Dragon for 12 meals, along with the snacks for the trip up. As we heard Bob and Doug describe before launching, the food is similar to MREs, or meals ready to eat, which that's what they consume during their time in the service with the military. So their MREs are essentially prepackaged meals that are ready for consumption without any heating or addition of any ingredients. They, of course, also have about 30 liters or 8 gallons of water up there with them.
Yeah, it's just the food to kind of get them to the space station. Once they arrive on board, all of their food is waiting for them, and they'll be enjoying the same menu that long-duration crew members have on board. It has quite a bit of variety, and it's a lot of thermostabilized or dehydrated foods or irradiated foods. So really just made to be shelf stable, so have a really long shelf life. A lot of the food that flies to station is good for at least 2 years. And they're able to extract a lot of the water from the food before they fly it, which saves on weight. And we all know that weight means more fuel, which means more money when we're launching things into space. Weight is everything. And once they're on board, they can just add water back into the food through special water dispensers on board the station and just heat it up. And they have everything from shrimp cocktail to they get pretty cool holiday meals. I know they always get turkey and stuffing and things like that on Thanksgiving. So they'll just have that once they get on board.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear what kind of food is available on the International Space Station. And depending on your mission as an astronaut, you could be up there for a few weeks or a few months. So it's safe to say that I can certainly appreciate the excitement we see on their faces when they open up a Cargo Dragon mission that has fresh oranges, because that isn't really a standard option available to them. So it's pretty awesome that we're able to send them treats like that, that puts it into perspective in terms of what is available and what space food actually entails. It's not all just dehydrated ice cream, although I am a sucker for dehydrated ice cream.
Yeah, coincidentally, the biggest thing that they usually look forward to is ice cream flying up in some of the cold packs on spacecraft like the Cargo Dragon. So always a treat for them. We haven't heard if they're bringing up any special treats for Chris and their Russian crew members, but I'm sure Again, we'll follow along the crew members on their social media, and we absolutely encourage you to do so. Both Bob and Doug are on Twitter, and you can go check them out and follow their entire mission throughout and just see what they're doing in space every single day.
Yeah, they're also both on Instagram. And I have found that their posts have been really interesting over the last few days. I got a chuckle when I saw Doug post the breakfast, steak and eggs. I always wondered what they would be eating the day of, and what really fascinated me was that NASA has plates. I was not expecting there to be a NASA plate being served to them, and I just thought that was a nice little insight into their life as preparing for Demo 2.
Yeah, the meatball's everywhere right now. It's everywhere.
I personally, I'm a big fan of The Worm. I'm certainly with my co-host Lauren Lyons on Team Worm there from the earlier webcast. Just real quick, we have a tweet that we would like to share with you all. Proud to yield the title of the last commander of an American-launched spacecraft to @AstroDoug, who, with @AstroBenkin, has returned U.S. to space from KSC after 3,252 days. Well done at commercial crew and SpaceX.
Yeah, and of course, so that tweet comes from Chris Ferguson. He was the commander of the very last shuttle mission, STS-135, which Doug Hurley was his crewmate and his pilot for. Chris Ferguson works with our other commercial crew provider, Boeing, and he's been instrumental in the development of their Starliner, and will be on the first Starliner mission to carry people along with NASA astronauts Mike Fink and Nicole Mann. So really cool. It's really just kind of a big space flight family. We all like it when each other succeed, and so it's really great to see those words from him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we said, the crew will be coming up to their evening meal. Like we mentioned before, they are MREs, or meals ready to eat, which is what Bob and Doug both would have consumed while they were serving in the military. So they would be pretty familiar with this. I associate MREs with kind of like camping food, your granola bars, the things that you can just pull out of your backpack and eat on the way. No water added, no temperature changing, just straight out of the package. So yeah, that's about what they should be doing now. As we are, let's get a quick check. We're approaching the T+2 hour mark here in a few minutes. So gosh, I can't believe that we lifted off 2 hours ago practically. Time has flown and stayed still all at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like it. In addition to that meal, though, the other major milestone we're going to be looking for is the second of our 5 burns to get to the International Space Station. It's going to be the boost burn. That's coming up at about 2:42 p.m. Pacific time, or in about 22 minutes or a little bit more. So we're going to be looking out for that. We're going to be following each of these burns as they happen, as those are really the critical mile markers essentially on the flight to the International Space Station. After a calculated amount of time based off of our orbital data, they're going to do this boost burn, and that's going to raise Dragon's orbit to just about 10 kilometers lower than the station itself. A little while after that, they're going to do what's called the close co-elliptic burn, and that's going to place Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the station. That just means we're maintaining constant altitude, or an orbit roughly 10 kilometers below the station itself.
Exactly. The boost burn is targeted to start at 12:43 a.m. Pacific, and will last a little more than 7.5 minutes. After this burn, Bob and Doug will be in an orbit that at Dragon's apogee, or the highest point, will be just 10 kilometers beneath the station. We'll have just 3 major burns after that left to complete, before we get to the integrated operations and Dragon's final approach to the International Space Station.
Yeah, so really exciting, things going really smoothly so far. We were spoiled with a really beautiful launch and a ride uphill, Dragon being carried into orbit by that Falcon 9 rocket. We've already completed our first successful burn, and that was the phase burn, which was just about an hour ago. It was completed successfully at 1:16 p.m. over here on the West Coast. The manual far field flight test, so Bob and Doug taking control of Dragon, Doug Hurley at the controls, changing Dragon's attitude or its pointing to put it in a very specific orientation, done successfully. And right now the crew stepping into that evening meal, and we're just going to continue to count down until we get that next boon, the boost burn. I've been talking for way too long.
You must be very tired at this point.
Very amped up still. We've got Americans in space on an American spacecraft. They'll launch on an American rocket from American soil. So, I mean, it's a great day so far. And we've got a long flight ahead of us still, and a lot of things that we need to do in order to make it to the International Space Station on time, but everything going really smoothly. It actually looks like they're getting ready to do a handover inside the flight control room here in Hawthorne, and I know the teams over in Houston also getting ready to do that handover. And then on this ground track, we do just want to point out for you how to see where Dragon is. You can see it pretty much right in the center of your screen over the very northern part of Africa, the small circle with the Dragon capsule in it. So we'll continue to have this up throughout the flight just so you can help track where Bob and Doug are over planet Earth at any given time. And pretty soon they'll be lining up pretty closely with the space station itself, which right now is a couple hundred miles ahead of them. It's actually already over the northern part of Africa, crossing just over the eastern part of Libya, about to swing over the corner of Egypt, and then out over the Sudan.
Yeah, depending on where you are as you're following along with our journey this afternoon or this evening, depending on your location tonight, if you spot that it might be in your area, take a walk outside and see if you can glimpse it. The International Space Station is, surprising to most people, it's actually really quite visible to the naked eye, if you're in the right place at the right time. And the sunlight is reflecting off of these solar arrays. If you're super lucky, you might even be able to catch a glimpse of Dragon following it. Like we said, Dragon is chasing down the International Space Station. And on previous instances for Dragon cargo missions, I have been able to see Dragon chasing the International Space Station, and it's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it's always a surreal feeling to look up and know that there are people.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the magical things about when you see the space station flying overhead. There are people on that thing, and now you might be able to look up. It'll probably be hard with the Crew Dragon because they don't have the large solar arrays able to reflect light, but we'll be getting some really spectacular views of Dragon as they make that final approach tomorrow morning. But for right now, things a little bit quiet. We are a little over 17 minutes away from that boost burn. The crew on board, Bob and Doug, moving into their evening meal. And we might have a little bit of chatter between them and the ground over the next couple of hours. They are scheduled to go to sleep, though, wrapping up a pretty long day in a few hours.
That boost burn that we were talking about, we're looking for that to start at 2:42 p.m. Pacific, so in almost exactly 20 minutes.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're getting a live look at the inside of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. You were just hearing over from Hawthorne that the teams there are about to enter into a handover. We're going to do the same here in Houston from the International Space Station Flight Control Room. That is one of 3 operational rooms that we're going to be using throughout the flight of the Dragon. Now, because of COVID-19, we actually opened up all 3 operational rooms to control the flight of the International Space Station with the ultimate goal of ending up right back here in Ficker 1 for docking. Very shortly, we'll be handing over to the blue flight control room. Last time maybe you have seen this room was during the flight of Exploration Flight Test 1, or EFT-1, the first test flight of Orion back in 2014. The teams here will hand over to the blue flight control room, then to the white, and we'll end up back here for the docking of Dragon with the same team you see here, led by Flight Director Zeb Scoville. Zeb Scoville gave some kind words to the teams here of Orbit 2 that oversaw the launch and took part in this historic mission today, and offered some congratulations to the SpaceX teams over in Hawthorne, congratulating them on a job well done and setting a new standard for the future of operational missions. Really looking forward to not only commercial flights, but ultimately this is maybe what the moon looks like. Now, Chris Cassidy aboard the International Space Station is about to enter into his designated sleep period. He's shifting a little bit from Bob and Doug, entering into his sleep a little bit earlier than the 2 crew members aboard Dragon are. But just before entering into this sleep period, he was able to say some kind words to Bob and Doug, even make a joke, and I'm paraphrasing here, that I think they just wanted to delay so they didn't have to do the cleaning duties aboard the space station today. Saturday is usually designated for cleaning the space station. Bob and Doug taking their time getting to orbit, but ultimately getting up there today. Everything going according to plan. So again, flight control teams here in Mission Control Houston about to hand over to the new teams over in the blue flight control room. We're counting down to the boost burn. We'll be following every step of the way, entering into... We'll be entering into orbital, into joint operations here soon.
Laura,
before that boost burn, I'll toss it back over to Hawthorne.
Outstanding to hear your voice from space. How are you today?
I am doing wonderfully. I am so happy to be talking to you guys today.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear your voice, and we're ready for the boost burn words.
Yes, Doug, SpaceX is go for the boost burn, and you can monitor per your displays.
Copy, go for the boost burn. And Laura from Dragon, it's great to be...
We're with you on 2.
Hey Josh, any expectation of changes to the timeline tomorrow, or what's on board we think is pretty solid?
Doug from SpaceX, are you still with us?
And Chris, as far as we know it, as you see it, I'm
We
not
had
aware of
a
any
temporary LOS for a teacher's handover. Can we have your words one more time?
Yeah, it's just great to be talking to you and Chris and the whole team as we work our way towards our first bedtime in space.
Yeah, we are looking forward to that. We'll talk about the rest of the timeline in between the next 2 burns, and we'd also like to tag up quickly on the media event in between those burns when we're complete with this first one.
That sounds good.
So we are a little over 9 minutes now away from that boost burn. You heard the oncoming core here in Mission Control in Hawthorne talking to the crew, Bob and Doug. They're about 9 minutes away from that boost burn. In 2 minutes, we're going to hear them do what's known as a slew or a maneuver to the burn attitude. So the Dragon spacecraft will reorient itself to be in the proper attitude to fire the Draco thrusters in the correct direction for this upcoming burn. The boost burn is going to last about 2.5 minutes is the planned timeline for it. And that's going to just raise Dragon's orbit up until it's about 10 kilometers lower than the station itself. It won't be 10 kilometers directly below, but its overall orbit will be at an altitude of about 10 less than the International Space Station.
Yeah, like I said before, that burn is targeted to start here in exactly 10 minutes, and it'll last a little more than 7.5 minutes. But yeah, after this upcoming burn, we'll have just 3 more burns left before we